esteemed colleague and friend, Michael Cohn, probably my best friend in the whole world. And one of the major things that we talk about is mental health and manliness, generally speaking. So we're going to kind of continue off one of our conversations that we normally have and just kind of spitball about where we think we are as far as mental health and how it relates to fitness, and where we think that the culture of fitness is within that realm. So pretty easy, huh?
Yes, small feat.
Yes. So with that said, like, where do you think the fitness industry is when it comes to mental health and addressing it as an issue as part of the fitness realm, and where do you think it should be?
Well, as a non-professional professional member of the fitness community,
Right.
I think we're still sort of in a phase where people are transitioning out of the typical, like, I only need to work out and that's my mental health, and like, you know, let's just do this, and not really like sit with like our trauma and sit with like what our behaviors are around like our mental health, and just go. There's just a big problem, I think, still, where it's just like, and not respectfully, not to shit on Nike, but like the whole just do it mentality,
Right.
like it kind of like shifted to something that's like a little more toxic when it comes to like fitness, because you're just doing like the physical work and not really stopping to do the mental work.
Right. I don't think that that might be not too great for Nike's bottom line.
No, yeah, but it just really, I mean, it just comes to mind because it's like,
Yeah.
you know, a staple in the fitness community.
That's true.
And I grew up in the 90s, so, you know, it was like big in my mind.
I was born in the 90s, so I have no idea what you're talking about.
I mean, you know, we're not wearing Nikes anyway, so it's fine.
I kind of am.
Yeah, same.
Right. Yeah, so I think that you're right. I think that the culture needs to shift in a much more intuitive direction. And I don't know if Nike is driving the culture like that anymore. You know what I'm saying? Like, if you look around the gym, it's not really brands that, you know, are shifting the focus towards anything. You know, I think that the people do. And I think it starts on the ground level. I think that the gym culture will change when the people that run the gyms have a more mindfulness approach towards what it is that they're trying to accomplish here, which is ultimately wellness, right? If we're trying to make people actually well, we need to create space for them to be well and do the things that they need to do that actually do that, as opposed to just like, all right, here's a place where you can just like work out. This is why I like this gym. I like Complete, because it provides a space where we can sit, we can talk, right? We have massage rooms, we have massage tables right behind us. We have various different types of, you know, spaces where it's like just for stretching. You know, we got just for Pilates. We got just for boxing and kickboxing. Like, and that's more than, and those spaces are utilized in different ways, and more than just like activity. You know, we have places here that are for meditation, and I think that's important as well to practice. So, do you have any ideas of like how we can implement mindfulness practice into the gym landscape?
I think the issue is, I mean, in this case also generational, from like the old school bodybuilder mentality and just like training till you bleed and like, you know, all that kind of bullshit mentality. Yeah, or throw up.
Right.
And sure, so some people still respond to sort of like that negative speech.
Yeah.
And that's fine. I mean, you obviously, you know better than I as a trainer. You have to, well, to be a great trainer as you are, you have to sort of like tap into and read your clients and implement the best form of communication for you to get through to them so that they can reach their goal,
Right.
and go further than that.
Yeah, I think that that's true. You do have to kind of meet them where they're at,
Yeah.
and listen to what they need.
But going back to your point, I think the conversation has to shift, or at least this is my opinion, towards recovery a little bit more than just like, all right, how do I get from like this body to this body, or like whatever the case might be.
Right. Right.
Because if you don't talk about recovery in that process, you're not going to be able to like finish that process.
Facts.
You're going to break down physically, you're going to break down mentally, for
Right.
sure. I've been there, everyone's been there.
Everybody's been there.
And you know, it's just important to have more conversations around what your physical recovery should look like on a daily basis, what it should look like on a weekly basis, on a monthly basis, and it obviously changes for every person depending on what, you know, their lifestyle is, or
Right.
you know, what their work schedule, or what they react to the most. Because, you know, for me, for example, and I know for you as well, martial arts is part of our like mental health sort of process.
It is.
But it's not necessarily for everybody else. So
Right.
it's sort of, again, tapping into what works for you, which doesn't necessarily work for me. And I think from just like my knowledge, a lot of trainers are just like, no, you're gonna do what works for me because that's what I know best.
Right.
And so it's just like, you have to kind of like remove yourself a little bit
You do.
and you know, be more in tune with the person that you're with. And also I just think that, I mean, it's not your job, but and this is just me because I'm a firm believer in therapy and like psychotherapy and behavior studies, that that has to be a conversation that has to go hand in hand with like what you're doing here in the gym, and what you're doing outside of the gym as well, to recover from, you know, your workout, your work environment, your friends, your family.
Exactly.
You know, it's all interconnected, and if you just tune out and you zone out,
Right.
then you're not really using what you're doing here for the greater good of your mental health.
Exactly. Ultimately, I think you're right. I think that there needs to be more focus on the recovery aspect. We train for micro and macro cycles with food, with training, with how we are going to level up and increase our weight or produce more power, but we don't ever consider the recovery aspect as to how that's going to elicit that response. So I think you're making some astute observations for someone that's not professional.
I mean, you know, I don't wear a T-shirt that says trainer on it, but
And nor should you. And nor should you. If you need a T-shirt
that says trainer.
that says trainer
Okay.
on it, then you probably might have some other issues. I think with your
Yeah, that's not my style.
it shouldn't be anybody's style.
I don't like uniforms.
I don't like me either. This is what I wore to work today, training.
Yeah.
people. You know what I'm saying? You gotta express yourself. But I think that back to what we were talking about. I think that I don't know. I think that because the gym has taken on this like corporate structure as how it moves, that some of the ideologies and the way that the corporate world works kind of bled into the gym world, which is why we still have that like go, just do it, corporation mindset. That is what's killing this industry, I think, more than anything, is because we're treating it like it's this resource that needs to be tapped, and like we're treating it like it's a client, a gigantic client that needs to be like just bled dry while you still can use them. And that's just not how this culture really works anymore. This isn't just like about memberships anymore. This isn't about like just showing up and like busting your ass every day. This is about the whole 24-hour cycle. Like, what am I doing to really enhance my life outside the frame of just like showing up for this hour, right? And I think that personal training has to resemble that. And to touch on what you talked about with mental health, I think trainers should have that skill set too. Yeah, we're not doctors or therapists, right? But you should be able to be trained enough to listen and hear what your clients really need. And it takes training to listen and be like, you know what, my client actually may just need therapy right now, right? And then they can come back to me. And a lot of therapists recommend training to get through what they're going through. So I think understanding where your client is in that continuum is paramount to the development of you and your client base. Mm-hmm. So I think that you expand your network, you expand your net worth. It's really interesting that people, I don't know, the industry just really hasn't caught on to that fact that this is really person-to-person situation. It's not,
And I think if it's sort of above the trainer's pay grade kind of situation where they may not feel like they want to do that or have the necessity to do that.
right.
If it's not on them, it should be on the gym to
Right.
provide sort of like a 360 approach and maybe more holistic in a way
Yeah.
in terms of like being like, hey, like, everyone comes in the gym with
Right.
something going on that they need to address, and they partially address it in the gym through working out, through massage, through
Right.
recovery, stretching, yoga,
Right.
saunas, like everything kind of goes within the realm. The nutrition, of
Right.
course, like, and I think sometimes that's just kind of like left up to you. But
Right.
but most things are in life, so it's just like you
Yeah.
kind of have to figure out by yourself, like
Yeah.
what's gonna make you happy, what's gonna what are the puzzle pieces that are gonna solve your issues, and
Right.
it's not only always just one. There might be a main cluster,
Yeah.
but then it's just like, well,
There's a
Yeah.
like I said, there's a continuum. There's like I think a cycle. We train, right, and then we work on our mobility and our ability to do the thing, and then we have access to the thing, and then we try to master the thing. But in the path to mastery, we are tired, so we must go back to the source, which is recovery, and then forgetting the thing. And then you go back around again. So, I think gym culture is a responsibility for the gym culture to be more verbose about, hey, listen, we need to make sure people are recovering. That's why we have. This gym I think does a really good job of all those things. It really we have the saunas, we have the cryo chamber in the back, we have massage therapists, But I think that pushing that aspect as a culture that's a whole different
Right.
thing. You got to take care of your
Yeah.
clients if you want them to come back, mentally and physically.
I think that sometimes the issue is that not everybody can afford a trainer that's sort of like a guide through this process potentially,
Right.
or can kind of like put you in the ways. But just in the same way that like if you go to a doctor,
Right.
they may not be able to give you the right direction, or you may not even afford the right person because that's just how our system is, unfortunately, without.
Yeah, in America anyway.
Yeah,
that's why I think that the burden of personal development relies on the individual. Anyway, however, I think that the system of training needs to be elevated. The floor has to be lifted a little bit, I think. You know what I'm saying? Like the bottom should not be like, I'm training with this dude 3 times a week. He might hurt me. He might not. I don't even know if he cares about me or whether or not I get. You know what I'm saying?
But the thing is though, for that floor to be lifted,
Right.
like all the people that are part of the community have to uplift themselves out of like whatever like societal standards that they were like raised in.
Right.
And that's super hard, of course, depending on like what race, gender, class, anywhere that you come from.
Yep.
But ultimately we're still all people, and we're part of a community, and if we don't personally deal with our own traumas, we're
Right.
just going to sort of like project them onto like our style of training or however we interact with like anyone else.
Precisely. We're at a crossroads now. We're at an impasse now, where it's time to make a decision whether we stay here and suffer a little bit longer, but it's a familiar suffering. We know what this suffering feels like, right? Or we can move on to another place where it's uncomfortable at first, but we ultimately meet our developmental goals. So I'm all about that later part, even though it's more difficult. Speaking of which, of doing that, I think men specifically have to have a hard time of talking about how they're feeling, and that's why we address it through fitness. There's so much like revenge gym porn is what I called it on Instagram. That's like, she didn't want me, so I became a monster. And then Jordan fucking Peterson talking about, you should be an animal, you should be a monster. But like, what are you talking? dude, you need to go to therapy. That's what,
Yeah.
you know, like, it's crazy that
Like,
these,
stop listening to podcasts.
Right.
It's just
Right.
like, listen, like,
just go to therapy,
Yeah.
get some help, and listen to how you feel. And it's okay to feel that way. A culture that deals with it like that can only grow from what it learns from itself. And I think a good 50% at least of the people that are motivated to go to the gym are because they experience some kind of trauma that they do not want to experience again. And as a trauma response, they go to the gym to better themselves in a different context because they have no control over what has happened to them. So what I think they need to do, if you're in that place yourself and you're watching this, you're listening to this, you need to give up all hope for a better past. It's over. That thing is done. It's time to move forward. It's time to evolve and be a little uncomfortable for a while and deal with what it is that you really need to deal with besides, you know, trying to train the pain away, you know? So
yeah. Ultimately, that just perpetuates like your personal toxicity and
Yes.
the traumas that you like sort of are holding on to instead of like working to like chisel them
Right.
and just like become like a better version of yourself so that
That's right.
you can realistically be a better version for your friends, your family, your clients,
Right.
like the rest of the world, you know, it's just
are
like,
endless. The benefits are endless. It's like, you know, you're not going to be perfect, but you're going to be a lot better than where you were before, and you're going to see those benefits when you interact with people. When you bring light into other people's lives, it's because of that work. And they'll notice it, and you'll feel a little lighter, and then they feel a little lighter. So I think that a culture of that is just on the uprising if we listen to ourselves.
yeah, I think there's like one missing link because like typical gym culture, there's this whole thing about being uncomfortable, right? And working through the pain.
Right.
But it's just superficial.
Right.
It's not, if you're like, oh, like work through the pain of like whatever traumatic experience like makes you feel this way or makes you like react or and it's like no, I don't want to do that.
Right.
Like I'm just gonna like lift these weights and like
Right.
that's the only discomfort that I want to like go through.
Yeah, because that internal suffering hurts way more than that 350-pound squat. Like,
And, you
it's
know.
over faster too. You know?
But you know, the weights are not gonna love you back, unfortunately.
The weights are not going to love you back. I wish it was a t-shirt.
Yeah.
You know? I have some colleagues that wear like the wildest shirts, like gym or die. Or die?
No, I'm good.
Death?
I'm good.
That's like gym
Or
therapy.
like eat some pizza and
some
like
pizza maybe.
you know,
Definitely eat some pizza.
run a bath.
Right. I think that the toxicity of gym culture also, it's some kind of like correlation between how, with men specifically, like how heterosexual men sometimes treat or behave around women. Because if they dealt with that trauma in a much more healthier way, we wouldn't have to talk about how to behave around women to certain men. And it also has to do with the culture of how men act in a group, right? Like that lone dude, and if the dude was the asshole in the club, for example, in a club where you listen to music, wouldn't behave like an asshole if he didn't have any friends around. Guarantee you, it wouldn't motivate him to climb up this like imaginary hierarchy to bring someone else down because of their own ego. I think a little bit of humility is in place, is important here, culturally.
Yeah.
Just to bring down the ego.
I mean, it's that sort of like false narrative of the alpha male that
Right.
realistically doesn't even exist
It doesn't
because
even exist in wolves.
yeah, that's not accurate.
It's not a real thing. No.
But everybody's stuck on this thing where they just have to be bigger, better, stronger,
On top.
cooler than
Yeah.
everybody else. And it's like, listen, it's not a competition with you or him, or it's like it's a competition with yourself. And
Correct.
the sooner that you realize how that's futile for your own progress in certain aspects,
Right.
like you'll be able to make some like real changes and breakthroughs.
That's right.
You know?
In the sports too, like Jordan wasn't paying attention to anyone else but Jordan, even though he was a sociopath. But like Usain Bolt, he's not looking at anybody else. He's just going.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And once you understand that type of self-mastery, right, you don't feel less than, because you're not comparing yourself to anyone but
Yeah.
yourself yesterday.
Yeah, unfortunately, now we live in a space where we're constantly bombarded by like, other people and what they're doing because of social media,
Right,
and it's
right.
just, even if you're not thinking that way,
Right.
you're still scrolling through something, and it's like unavoidable to be like, ugh,
Yeah.
like
I
could
man, I
do
feel like
this, I could
shit.
do that, or like
This
I'm like,
motherfucker's in where's he at right now?
right,
So Mike is like the recovery master. I don't know what happened to Mike for him to focus so heavily on chilling the fuck out. But he's pretty good at chilling, which I was not really good at when we first met. I was really like, especially before COVID, I was really into just like working a lot because I had to get my daughter through college. I had to accomplish a lot of different things at the same time. So Mike over time was just like slowly influencing me to be like, yo, you gotta chill the fuck out. What are some of the things that you do to chill the fuck out when you're feeling stressed, when you're feeling anxious?
Yeah, I was just talking about this the other day. I think the most important thing for everyone, whether they go to therapy, whether they're more informed or not, is to spend some time and like feel your body and like listen to your body and know when something's about to happen. There's always a shift. For me, it's usually like pressure or some sort of like discomfort in my like stomach and just in my whole body, like I feel uncomfortable. So kind of catching yourself before you start spiraling is
Mentally or physically?
mentally, because then it'll affect you physically.
How do you know that you're about to spiral or about to experience some form of discomfort and anxiety?
It's like I was saying, it's about recognizing those like sort of red flags that are in your body.
Right.
Just like different types of physical discomfort or mental sort of like patterns that you may have. A lot of times, like you'll spin a thought round and round, or like maybe like a song will like start spinning round and round, and it's just kind of like it's like hard to get out of it. It's like you're running in a circle, and you're like, no, I really need to like leave this before I just like crash.
Right.
And
Yeah, I know that feeling.
and for me, one thing that I'll say, and this could be not for everybody, but it's microdosing mushrooms really helped me.
Yeah, you know what time it is, baby.
Because it really shifts your mood. It's like no joke, like just a little bit. You figure out what your dose is.
Right.
Non-addictive as opposed to like any sort of medication that
Mike is also straight edge hardcore. He doesn't drink, do drugs, smoke, and mushrooms is the only thing that he does to alter his mood or his state. So he's super sensitive to psychedelics. So
yeah, I mean, I'm not trying to get high or anything. I'm just trying to avoid having like an anxiety attack,
right,
or it sort of triggering my depression or anything of that nature.
Right.
But besides that, like if you have the time or the space, what works for me is sort of removing myself from whatever the situation might be.
Right.
Or the person.
Or the person sometimes.
Yeah, exactly. And it's just like, hey, listen, like I'm feeling this kind of way. Give me a second. I'm gonna go over here. You go over there.
Right.
And like let's see each other in a bit. And for me, it's just trying to unwind and in some way meditate. I love grounding myself by just laying on the floor and just kind of feeling everything like leave my body.
Well, that sounds wonderful.
Yeah. Now, if you have mushrooms in that equation, it's even more pleasant.
In that case.
But yeah, just put something on, maybe like something ethereal, ambient, whatever suits like your state of being, and then just stay there. I know a lot of people like to be present when they meditate, but I don't mind like if I can, like falling asleep,
Right.
because that means that you're really just
truly
releasing everything out.
Yeah.
So it's fine, you know.
Yeah.
Then you wake up and you're like, okay, you know,
Okay.
like.
Well,
And I know sometimes, like, you know, if you're in the gym,
yeah.
you may not have that option, but
Right.
there's different areas where you can go and just take a moment.
Yes.
And it's also like you find your own tools, and
Right.
I think like spending time to do that is super important because it'll help you to like manage your day-to-day like micro like crises or aggressions that you may just like instinctually just like want to like punch someone in the face or just like bite their head off, and it's like that's not going to solve the issue.
Right.
You know, it's just not, and you know.
I think well, those are all really helpful tools. Thank you for your time. As usual, love you. Thank you so much for coming by. And yeah, that was Michael Cohn giving you some fucking jewels so that you can, you know, navigate this world of stress and anxiety a little bit better, but also be more mindful about how you go about your day so you can be a slightly better human being. Isn't that lovely?